Good evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was going to say it is my pleasure to serve as the Dean of the College of Communication, Information, and Media, and you've just demonstrated why. I am Paige Turner, and I am so absolutely pleased to be here tonight with you for several reasons. We have a number of very important people with us tonight, not to mention just our speaker. I want to thank President Mearns for being with us, Provost Rivera Mills for being with us, and a personal thank you to my sister, Amanda Schneider. Yeah, so Amanda, thank you for joining us. So tonight, we are here to celebrate the David Letterman Distinguished Professional Lecture and Workshop Series, which was established in 2008 through a very generous gift from Mr. Letterman, who is a 1969 Ball State graduate. This series brings together major business, media, and academic figures to campus to engage with students, to talk about the latest issues in communication, media, and cultural forces that are shaping our society. Guests have included legendary newscaster Ted Koppel, innovator Tom Kelly, public policy expert Kathleen Hall-Jamieson, and our own CCI alumna, Tiara Thomas, who received a Grammy and Oscar award for her songwriting. Mr. Letterman has personally invited and hosted conversations with media icons and philanthropist Oprah Winfrey, Twitter co-founder Biz Stone, and primetime host Rachel Madden, as well as filmmakers such as Spike Jonze and Bennett Miller. To introduce our spring 2022 speaker is the National Association for Hispanic Journalists President, Piala Fernandez-Hermanzes, who was born in Mexico, moved to Sweden, and is now a sophomore advertising major with a concentration in public relations. Please join me in welcoming her to the podium.
Hola. Bienvenidos todos. Welcome everyone to the lecture. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Quiñones. Mr. Quiñones is currently the host and producer of TV show What Would You Do? He is also a broadcast journalist, motivational speaker, and an author. His latest book being What Would You Do? Words of Wisdom About Doing the Right Thing. It is my pleasure to introduce him. As I begin, I'd like to share how inspired I am by all the work he's done for the Latinx community. Great Latinx role models like Mr. Quiñones are the reason I never gave up on thinking I too could become great someday and represent my community with pride. When I first moved to the United States, I doubted my capabilities because English was not my first language. It's crazy to think that now I'm up on stage speaking fluent English in front of a large crowd of people. I now realize that everyone is capable of anything if they really believe in themselves, just like Mr. Quiñones believed in himself and his work. Mr. Quiñones is a fifth-generation Mexican-American. He grew up in a Spanish-speaking household just like I did. Some of Mr. Quiñones' career highlights include 33 years at ABC News, which includes time at the anchor desks of TV news magazines 2020 and Primetime. He has won 7 National Emmy Awards for his reporting through the years. Among his other honors are Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Hispanic Media Coalition and Guerra Lifetime Achievement Award from the San Antonio Association of Hispanic Journalists. He earned his Bachelor's of Arts from St. Mary's University and his Master of Arts degree from Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. Mr. Quiñones' lecture today is From Barrio to Network Television, The Power of Never Taking No for an Answer. And if you haven't watched his show, What Would You Do? Check this out.
Excuse me, sir. Is that a Confederate flag?
My ancestors died fighting that flag. It's an insult.
If it bothers you, you can just look the other way.
Excuse me, sir. Why are you wearing that jacket? What do you think when you see a symbol?
Racism.
A lot of things bother me, but I let it go. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised with racism.
But how are we supposed to let it go, Patty? It's every day. We hear it now.
Tuesday night, starting July 7th, What Would You Do is back with an all-new season.
Let's do it.
And in times like these, with all that our country's facing,
It brings tears to your eyes.
It brings tears to my eyes every day.
it fills me with amazement to see people standing up for each other.
Be his friend and support him. That's it.
Over and over.
I think you got to be the bigger man than that.
And over again.
Be kind to him, please.
People reaching out.
You can't read the menu?
I'm not drunk. I'm a veteran.
You've been wasting my time.
How you doing, buddy?
Hey.
Good. Tell me how I can help.
Standing up for strangers.
He's just a crazy veteran.
You need to walk away. If I get up, I'm telling you it's going to be an issue. Walk away.
Choosing to do the right thing with no idea hidden cameras are watching their every move.
Everyone deserves a chance.
And this season, nothing is off limits on What Would You Do.
Coach, I'm gay.
Just give him time. He'll be fine.
I really like this lady.
Did you?
Yeah.
Things are different now in this world. He doesn't realize it.
The world is changing, but it's people. I could even get like emotional talk. It's like people like you.
From the outrageous
Yoga pants aren't for everyone, and you're proof of that.
Excuse me?
to people in need of a helping hand.
Would you really pay for him?
With an open heart.
I just feel bad that he got me as a mom. I feel really overwhelmed.
Or just lending an ear to a stranger in need.
Postpartum depression is a thing that women deal with all the time, you know, and like being a mom is hard.
I'm John Quiñones.
Hi.
And this is Sarah Haynes.
Oh, God.
I can't even tell you how touched I am. We need people like you.
Join us Tuesdays for an all-new What Would You Do season America Needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
So what will millions of Americans be watching Tuesday nights this summer on ABC?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The amazing and uplifting new season of What Would You Do premieres Tuesday night, July 7th at 10, 9 Central on ABC.
My favorite show.
Now, join me in welcoming Mr. Quiñones to the stage.
All right, guys, thank you. Thank you. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Wow, great to be here. Wow, thank you. What a good evening, everyone. What an honor and a privilege it really is to be here at Ball State. And thank you, Paola Fernandez, for pronouncing Quiñones so well. It's not the easiest name to pronounce. I've been called everything from Quinones to Quinones. I've been called, even Barbara Walters had trouble on What Would You Do and on 2020. Yes, I'm the host of that show, What Would You Do? So you've been warned. We can put those hidden cameras anywhere, like in this room. If you're sitting there and the person next to you passes out and you step over them to go get another drink, you're going to have me to talk to. Yes, I'm a reporter. I'm a storyteller for ABC News all these years, a career that I have embraced because of all these years. It's allowed me to shine a light on issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about, a lot of people don't want to hear about. What Would You Do is a show we created because we wanted to hold up a mirror to American society, right? We wanted to know, how do you unlock the power and the light that exists in each one of us so that we're all better equipped to say, you know, that's wrong, or how can I lend a helping hand? What Would You Do poses that very question. Would you witness any kind of injustice, gay bashing, someone being ridiculed because of the color of their skin or the accent in their voice, condemned because of the religion that they practice? When you come face to face with bullying, spousal abuse, and the little voice in the back of your head says, do something, do you step in or do you step away? What would you do? I mean, after all, isn't that the very definition of a person's character? It's not what we do when everyone's watching. That's easy. It's what we do even when no one is watching. It's all about, as Spike Lee would say, doing the right thing. And you know, we all face this moral and ethical dilemmas every day in both our personal and our professional lives, regardless of what we do for a living. It doesn't matter whether you're a college student at a great university like Ball State. Doesn't matter where you work, whether you work in the legal profession or in education, healthcare, God knows, politics, right? It doesn't matter whether you own your own business, whether you work in my profession, the media, journalism. Young people, younger than you guys in high school, face these ethical dilemmas every day. The question is, what do we do with that opportunity to right a wrong? Do you sound the alarm? Do you lend a helping hand? Or do you just look the other way, keep walking the other way and minding your own business? Silence is complicity. We have to raise our voices, I think now louder than ever, because these are tough times in America. I've never seen this country as divided as it is right now, and I grew up during the civil rights movement. I mean, I think part of the reason is the COVID pandemic. Over the last year, there's been an increase in anxiety, an increase in depression, an increase in the demand for mental health services. In other words, these days, a lot of people are on their very last nerve. People are angry, and they take it out on just about anyone they encounter, but especially people in the service industry. We don't filter ourselves like we used to. The latest figures from the FBI show that hate crimes in this country are at the highest level that they've been in a decade. And most of the victims, 62% of them, have been targeted because of their race or ethnicity and their ancestry. All you have to do is watch the news or browse the internet. All those cell phone videos that go viral on social media and the impassioned chants of Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. During the pandemic, all the debates and arguments over wearing masks, right? And whether or not to get vaccinated. The fight over, as you saw, Confederate symbols and statues. Should we keep them up? Should we tear them down? The condemnation of Muslims, transgenders, and the LGBTQ plus community. Disturbingly, also during COVID, the attacks on the Asian community. And then, of course, an issue that is very close to my heart, and that is the boiling debate over immigration, with Latino families down on the U.S.-Mexico border being separated simply because they were trying to come to this country looking for a better life. What would you do, right? And over all these years, we started doing this show about 14 years ago. I met some of the college students. We used to watch it when I was 6 years old. I couldn't believe it's been that long. And we're not doing it right now because of COVID, but ABC is promising that we'll get it back on the air sometime soon, so I'm pushing for that. But over all these years, we filmed about 1,000 scenarios, ethical dilemmas, and all of them are based on real-life situations that we rip right from the headlines. I get messages on social media all the time from people saying, John, I had a what would you do moment today. I thought you were going to come out. It's like I'm only one guy in one place, So they happen in real life, and they happen to all of us, but especially people who have been marginalized, people of color. It's even happened to me. I mean, here I am. I think I'm a famous television reporter. I have my own show on ABC all these years as a journalist. The other day, I was at an airport in Dallas, and I was getting ready to get on a plane, right, to fly to New York. And I was lucky enough to be flying in first class. So I'm standing there in the first class line at the gate at the airport. I wasn't dressed. I was wearing a sweatshirt and a baseball cap and jeans, and nobody recognized me. And I'm standing in the first class line right under the sign that said first class. And I look over to my left, and all the other first class passengers, by mistake, have lined up in the economy line, which happens, right? I was in the right place. I'm standing there getting ready to get the plane. And suddenly, the lady at the front of that first class line looks at me and she said, Sir, are you even in first class? And I just pointed to the sign and I nodded. I didn't want to cause a stir, right? And she said, well, the first class passengers are over here, so get to the back of this line. And I didn't want to argue, right? True story. So I started walking to the back of that line. Who cares? I get on the plane 10 people behind. It doesn't matter, right? But on my way to the back of the line, she yelled out, the announcement was made in English. We speak English in America. And then finally, other people in line who recognized me finally from the show, other people in line said, John, is this a what would you do scenario? I said, no, unfortunately, this is real life. And as I'm standing in the back of the line, my only concern was that I was going to have to sit next to this mean person on the plane, right? I didn't want to sit next to her. And I got on the plane, and no, she was by herself, by the window, no surprise there. And as I went by her, I couldn't resist, you know? I leaned over, and I kind of whispered to her, but I made it clear. I said, you know, my name is John Quiñones, and I do a TV show called What Would You Do? And you would be perfect for the show. You could play the part of the racist. She just gave me another dirty look. But that's why we do this show, I think, because this country needs it more than ever. I got a wonderful message on Twitter the other day when someone posted, the world would be a better place if we all thought John Quiñones was in the next room monitoring our behavior, because, of course, we would all be on our best behavior. And, of course, it's made it impossible doing this show for me to have lunch or dinner anywhere without people wondering what's going to happen. The good news is that when I'm there, everyone is on their best behavior, you know. Everyone is lending a helping hand, you know, paying extra on their tips. So how do we do it? How do we become active bystanders who step up and do the right thing and not just passive observers when they witness injustice? Well, I think it starts in the home, right? I think that very often children learn to discriminate and to bully, to think they're better than others as they're growing up. You know, there's that great song from the musical South Pacific, a song where the lyrics in part say, you've got to be carefully taught before it's too late, before you're 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. Well, it also applies, you know, to the reverse. You can also be taught to be more accepting, more loving, and more compassionate. I think it's as simple as putting yourselves in the shoes of the victim. And, you know, for some of us, it's easier. People of color, the Jewish community, the LGBTQ plus community, anyone who has been marginalized. After all these years of doing the show, I have found that time and again, the people who step in and come to the rescue and sound the alarm are people who themselves have been the targets of racism or bullying or gay bashing or spousal abuse. And that's why I feel, in many ways, I was kind of born to do What Would You Do? I was destined to do this show because of where I come from and the world that I grew up in and the hurdles that I had to overcome to get to ABC News. You see, a lot of people who only know me from ABC, up there with the great people of ABC News, Diane Sawyer, you know, David Muir, and Ted Koppel before that, and the great Barbara Walters. People who only know me from ABC have no idea the long, hard struggle that it took for John Quiñones to get to ABC News. I was born in the Barrio, in a poor neighborhood, a barrio that was so barren and poor, they used to call it El Ghost Town. It was so tough. I didn't speak a word of English. And you know how we were poor. You know how some people say, we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor. We knew we were poor. You know? We had an old black and white television in the back of the house, and we saw how the other side lived. My father was a janitor. My mom used to clean houses on the rich part of town. He dropped out, my father, out of school in the 3rd grade to pick cotton in South Texas, and my mother dropped out, Maria, to pick, you know, crops also in South Texas in the 4th grade. So they didn't speak much English, and in San Antonio, you didn't have to, right? The corner store where we bought our groceries was in Spanish. The church where we went to pray was in Spanish. The music that we listened to and danced to was in Spanish. So I didn't learn a word of English until I went to the 1st grade, me or my 2 sisters. This is before bilingual education. And we couldn't afford preschool or kindergarten. The 3 of us went straight to 1st grade. So I'll never forget. And by the way, I get a kick out of people saying, you didn't speak English? When did your family come to America? The Quiñoneses have been here 5 generations. I'm probably more American than everyone in this room. So I get a kick out of people saying, John Quiñones, you're Mexican-American. When did you swim across the border and get to the U.S.? And I tell them, we were always here. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Right? True story. But I didn't speak English, so I'll never forget the 1st grade of school. First day, little Juanito Quiñones in Mrs. Gregory's class at Pruis Hall Elementary. And I'm sitting there the first day, twiddling my thumbs because I didn't speak English and the teacher didn't speak Spanish. And at 10 in the morning, the school bell rings, right? So it's recess time. Where do all the children go? They go out to the playground. Where does little Juanito Quiñones go? I walked home. I lived a block from Hall Elementary. And I remember going through the gate in my house and going in the door, and my mother, Maria, God rest her soul, Maria said, Juanito, ¿qué pasó? What happened? And I told her, se acabó, in Spanish. It's over. I told her, I like school. 2 hours and you're done. This is going to work out very nicely. She literally grabbed me by the ear and dragged me back to Mrs. Gregory's class because she knew the value of an education, not ever having gotten one herself. They used to punish us in school for speaking Spanish. The coach had a big old paddle, wooden paddle with holes drilled in it for extra power and speed. And literally, they would give us 3 spankings to the boys if they caught us speaking Spanish. You know, I was always trying to help my parents. Even when I was 8 years old, I went to work as a shoe shine boy. I built this little shoe shine box, and I bought some rags and some polish. And me and my cousin Joey, we would shine shoes for 10 cents a pair, right? And we would go to all the bars, la cantinas, because the drunk guys didn't realize how much they were tipping you. And we made a killing until one night we're coming home and we were jumped by a gang. You know, it was a tough neighborhood. They stole my rags and my shoe shine box and all my earnings from the night. And that was the end of my shoe shining career. But when I was 13, my father, Bruno, was laid off from work at the school. He was the janitor at my high school, and he was laid off from work. So we did what a lot of families in South Texas had to do back then, especially Latino families. We became migrant farm workers. My mother and my 2 sisters and I got in these trucks in a caravan with strangers, and we journeyed 1,700 miles from San Antonio to Northport, Michigan, the cherry capital of the world, where we picked cherries for 75 cents a bucket. And I remember teetering on the top of these ladders with a bucket strapped around my neck. And it would take me 2 hours to fill that darn bucket for 75 cents. And we did that for about 6 or 7 weeks, and then we did what all migrant farm workers do. We followed the crops, right? So we came down to Ohio. And by the way, we got stuck in Indianapolis on the way up there. We ran out of gas and separated from the caravan. And we didn't know what we were going to do. We had no gas, no food, no money. And my mom went into a Catholic church in Indianapolis, and she asked the priest for help. And he came out and he gave us money for gas and a gallon can of green beans and a loaf of bread. And those green bean sandwiches helped us get all the way to Northport, Michigan. When we followed the crops down to Ohio, Toledo, there's a little town called Swanton, Ohio, where we picked tomatoes for 35 cents a bushel. And man, I was a champion tomato picker. I did 100 bushels a day. And back then, that's $35, right? Back then, it was like good money. And then my father did 130 bushels, and my sisters contributed, and my mother contributed. And we learned the value, as many of you families here have learned, the value of the family coming together in times of difficulty, right? And pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. But I'll never forget being on my knees on the cold, hard ground at 6 in the morning, looking at a row of tomato plants that for a young 13-year-old boy's eyes seemed to go on for miles and miles. That's what I had to look forward to that day. And my father, Bruno, looking down and saying, Juanito, do you want to do this kind of work for the rest of your life? Or do you want to get a college education someday? It was a no-brainer. I knew I didn't want to do that kind of back-breaking work for the rest of my life, but no one believed in me. When I came back to San Antonio and I would ask my teachers and my counselors, how do I prepare for the SATs? How do I prepare for the ACTs? How do I take advanced placement classes in math, biology, and English? Do you know what my own teachers would say? My own teachers and my own counselors would say, John, it's wonderful that you have this dream of someday being a television reporter. Because I wanted to be a reporter since I was 13. I used to watch a guy named Geraldo Rivera on 2020. Remember Geraldo? And he was the only one with a Hispanic last name on national television. So I wanted to be, he went to Turkey and did stories on the heroin trade, and he traveled throughout Latin America, mustache, long hair, blue jeans, and I wanted to be like Geraldo. And my own teachers would say, it's wonderful that you have this dream of someday being a television reporter, but we think you should try wood shop. or metal shop or auto mechanics. Not that there's anything wrong with those great trades. A lot of people make a good, hard living doing that kind of work, right? But I wanted to go to college. And my own teachers and my own counselors in the 9th grade did what people do on that TV show, What Would You Do? Every Tuesday night. They judged me by the color of my skin and the accent in my voice. But thank God for my mother, Maria. Maria was the one who pushed and motivated. She would say, mijo, which means my son, mijo, don't be embarrassed about having to wear the same clothes to school every other day. At least we wash those clothes, right? They're clean. She would say, mijo, don't be embarrassed about having to take bean and tortilla tacos for lunch when all the other kids are taking their fancy bologna and white bread. Hey, now we know that beans and tortillas have more protein, right? She would say, mijo, that doesn't matter. Don't be embarrassed. What matters is what's in here, in your cabeza, in your brain, and what's in here, in your corazón, in your heart. And she's the one who kept me going. You know, the great African American poet Maya Angelou once wrote that we all marvel at the beauty of a butterfly, right? We look at a butterfly and we look at the gorgeous wingspan and the colors, but seldom do we consider all the changes that that butterfly has to go through to attain that beauty. And man, I'm no butterfly, but I went through some changes, and so did my family. But thank God, you know, when all those teachers would say no to me, there was that one English teacher in 10th grade English, Mrs. Gutierrez, who read my essays that I wrote for English class, and said, John, I love the way you tell stories. I love the way you write stories. Have you thought about journalism? I said, of course, I've been watching Geraldo all these years. She said, no, I think you ought to meet the man who runs the school newspaper, Mr. Harris. So she trots me out to Mr. Harris's office in 10th grade at Brackenridge High School, and he runs the Brackenridge Times, the high school newspaper. So he hires me as a reporter, you know, as part of the team at the school newspaper. And within 3 months, I was the chief of editorials. So there I was, writing these big investigative stories like, why are the teachers parking in the students' parking spaces? Tonight we go undercover and find out. And I loved it. And I loved it. And then along came another hero in my life. And heroes don't always have to be people. In my case, it was a government program called Upward Bound. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's part of the TRIO program, right? Yeah. It saved my life, you know. They came to my school, and they interviewed a bunch of students, and I was one of 10 Upward Bound students allowed to be in the program. And it's wonderful because they give you extra courses in math, biology, and English, just what I had been asking for, on Saturdays. They actually paid us $50 to go to class on Saturdays. And then I got to live on a college campus like this for 6 weeks when I was in high school, the 10th grade, 11th grade, senior year. And it does so much for a kid, not only for me, but for my mother, who learned that it was okay to let her little boy go off to college. Latino families, you know, they're so close. And when I said goodbye to my mom, because I was going to go to Southwest Texas State, 45 minutes from my house, for only 6 weeks, my mother was sobbing. Mijo, 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 when am I going to see you again? And again. Mom, I'm going to be back Saturday with some dirty laundry, you know? And I want some of those bean and tortilla tacos, right? And she finally got over it. So it educated them, it educated me, it gave me the first semester in college. I was able to go into college, you know? The great civil rights leader, Martin Luther King, once said that in times of adversity, you got to have faith. And faith is taking that first step. It doesn't matter if you can't see the entire staircase. Just take that first step. Because tomorrow, there'll be another step, right? And the next day, another baby step. Well, my first step, following the advice of the great Martin Luther King, was to get rid of my Mexican accent. Because when you learn English as a second language, in Spanish, there is no SH sound. So I would say, these are my shoes, this is my shirt. And people would make fun of me. And I knew that if I was going to be like my heroes, Peter Jennings and Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite and Tom Brokaw and Geraldo, I was going to have to get rid of my accent. So following the advice of Martin Luther King, taking that first step, I didn't have to see the entire staircase. I tried out for the role of Romeo in a drama class. And not only did I wound up getting, maybe it's because no one else tried out, but I was Romeo for a citywide production. And the good news was that I got to kiss Juliet, Mary Lou Gomez. She was my first girlfriend. Of course, we had to practice kissing behind the curtains just to get it right. And the bad news was that in this ridiculously macho Hispanic school, I had to wear leotards. And I'm glad there wasn't any YouTube back then, because those videos might live in infamy, my skinny legs. But that's how I started step by step, you know. And then I went to college, went to St. Mary's. I got my job at a radio station. I was an intern. And that was my advice to all of you students, get an internship, right? I worked at a radio station. I was 18 years old, and I was the delivery man for a drugstore in San Antonio. And the owner of the drugstore knew the general manager of a radio station. And at night, between my deliveries, because I had 3 jobs when I was in college, I worked in the geology department, the cafeteria, and at night I delivered, when I say I delivered drugs, people, of course, presume that because you're Latino, you're a drug dealer, right? No. I drove a Volkswagen, and I brought little old ladies their prescription medicine. And between my deliveries, though, I would practice. I would record into a little cassette recorder my voice, still working on my accent, right? And I would get a hold of whatever I could read and read and read and read. And then one night, the owner of the drugstore heard me reading into my recorder through the men's room door. And when I came out, he said, "You really want to do this?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, I know the general manager of a radio station, and they're looking for interns." So he takes me to KKYX. Now, I was your age, right? I loved rock music. I loved R&B music. I loved, rap music. I loved Tejano music. This was a country music station. And I wasn't a big fan. I like it now, but back then, not so much. But it was a job opportunity. And you got to be from Texas to understand this. But when I got my job, I got paid $2 an hour. Part of my job at this radio station was the disc jockeys had horses in the back of the studios that they would use in parades and rodeos and public appearances. My first job in broadcasting was cleaning up the horse manure in the corral of the DJ's horses and feeding the horses. But at night, I would sneak into the back control room. They had these beautiful reel-to-reel recorders and gorgeous microphones. And I would practice whatever again, trying to get rid of my accent. And I would read whatever I could at midnight. And I would play it back, and I would record my voice and play it back, practicing. The only problem was at that hour of the night, at midnight, all the professionals who could criticize my work were gone, right? The only one left there was the janitor, and his name was Pablo Gonzalez. And Pablo's English was worse than my father's, who spoke no English. But I would drag him in there, and I would say, "Pablo, listen to this. What do you think?" And he would say, "How does it sound, Pablo?" He goes, "Más o menos, more or less. It sounds pretty good." He was my first critic. And from there, I moved on to another radio station, and then no one would hire me in television, but I never gave up. I kept pushing and dreaming. When no one would hire me in television in Texas, I applied to Columbia University, and I got accepted. And not only that, I got a fellowship to the journalism school in New York. And from there, I went to Chicago, my first job in broadcasting. And in Chicago, I did a story that I wanted to do a long time about a story that's very close to my heart, as I mentioned, immigration. Even back then, it was a hot-button issue. I convinced my news director to let me go to Mexico and go undercover. I was 27 years old, and pose as a Mexican citizen trying to get into the US, right? And my news director said, "Okay, go for it." So we took hidden cameras, and we went to Mexico, and I pretended that I was just another Mexicano looking for passage into the US. And I found a coyote, a smuggler, who for $300, that was a bargain back then, now it's $18,000. For $300, he sold me a fake birth certificate and a fake Social Security card. And he said, "Okay, tonight I'll put you on an inner tube and we'll cross the Rio Grande, from Nuevo Laredo, Mexico to Laredo, Texas." And so I ran across the bridge. Back then, you could go back and forth very easily between the US and Mexico. And I told my camera crew where to hide in the bushes on the Texas side of the Rio Grande. Then I went back to meet my coyote in Mexico. And he tells me to take my clothes off. He puts me on an inner tube. And I was worried because I was wearing a wireless mic like this. So I convinced him to let me keep my T-shirt on, because otherwise, he thought, I was just another immigrant. If he had found out that I was a journalist trying to document this, he would have, who knows, killed me. A lot of people wind up dead along the banks of the Rio Grande by coyotes who take their money and then discard their bodies. Who cares? Who's going to give? Who's going to care? Because these people were doing something illegal anyway, right? Fortunately, I had a good coyote. He was a decent man as far as smugglers go. And he puts me on an inner tube, and I floated across the U.S. to Laredo, Texas, all captured on hidden camera. And I didn't stop there. Remember, this is for a story in Chicago, right? So I took a bus, got to Chicago, and in Chicago we had heard that there was this restaurant where the owner had 7 undocumented workers working for him, and he had not paid them in 17 weeks. And every time they complained, he would say, hey guys, you get to sleep here in the basement, you get to eat all the food you want, you keep complaining and I'll call immigration and have you deported. And by the way, that happens in this country today. So I went to that restaurant, pretending that I just arrived from Mexico. I wasn't dressed like this, obviously. I spoke only Spanish, and the owner hires me as a dishwasher. So I go to work, and by day I'm washing dishes, bussing tables at this restaurant. And then at night, I went down and I slept with the other 7 Mexican workers in the basement where they lived, next to the dishes and the silverware and the cans of food. And I still wonder what they must have thought, because by day I'm washing dishes and bussing tables, and at night I pulled out a little camera and I started interviewing them about their lives in Spanish. And they told me how they were being held as, virtual indentured servants at this restaurant, not having gotten paid in 17 weeks. Well, the next day I came back to work, this time wearing a suit, speaking fluent English, with a camera crew behind me. And I remember we had to chase the owner of the restaurant through the parking lot because he didn't want to talk to me about what he was doing to those men. But the day after it aired on CBS television in Chicago, WBBM, the U.S. government moved in. They shut down the restaurant. They arrested the owner. They got the Mexican workers the money they were owed and temporary visas to remain in this country while they worked on their residency. And I knew then that those were the kinds of stories that I was destined to tell. I call journalism the candle in the darkness. Imagine this room has gone pitch dark. There's been a horrible storm outside. The electricity's out. We're all stumbling around trying to find a way out. We can't even see our hands in front of our faces. Well, the journalist, he or she, is the person with a little flashlight or the little candle. They can shine it on the darkest corners of the room to illuminate injustice, to illuminate corruption, to illuminate civil rights violations and human rights violations. I think when journalism is done right, those are the kinds of stories that we should be telling. That story won my first Emmy Award, and it brought me to the attention of ABC News. My hero, Peter Jennings, they hired me to cover Latin America. And they hired me because the man they had working for them, Bill Stewart, was shot and killed in Nicaragua because he couldn't understand Spanish or what the soldiers were telling him in Nicaragua. So the networks then said, we should hire somebody who speaks Spanish to go to Latin America. And there I was with my little Emmy Award, and I was hired. And I loved it. And I got to work for Peter Jennings, this great anchorman who was like my hero, but he was like James Bond, right? He had that fancy accent and meticulously suited, and he could go live on the air forever. He passed away about 11 years ago. And we miss him still. But he was a great anchorman. And one of my first stories in Nicaragua was an interview with the president. I got this exclusive interview with the president of Nicaragua, a guy named Daniel Ortega, who is the president, by the way, today again. And I got an exclusive interview, and it was a big deal. So I called Peter Jennings in New York, and I said, Peter, I got this great interview with Daniel Ortega. And he goes, fine, young man. I don't think he knew my name. Fine, young man. I look forward to having you on the evening news, the World News Tonight. So I hang up with Peter Jennings. I'm in Nicaragua, and the phone rings again, and it's the president's office canceling my interview. And I'm shaking in my boots because the news is on at 6:30. It's now 4:30. They made a 2-minute hole in the broadcast for me, and now I won't be able to deliver it. And I was shaking in my boots, and I called Peter Jennings, and I said, look, whatever I was going to offer, I can't do it anymore. And I thought he was going to fire me or yell at me. And instead, Peter Jennings gave me some words of advice that I carry with me to this very day. He said, young man, this will happen again in your career where someone promises you something that they don't deliver. He said, but listen to me. Don't worry so much about talking to the movers and shakers of the world. You know, presidents of countries, the presidents of corporations, politicians. Don't worry so much about talking to the movers and the shakers of the world. Concentrate on talking to the moved and the shaken. In other words, talk to the real people. As a Latino reporter, you can go into countries like Nicaragua and Guatemala and El Salvador, and because you understand the language and you understand the customs, you can talk to the campesinos, the peasants, who are the real victims of war, right? People who don't have a voice. Concentrate on giving people who don't have a voice, and you'll be a better reporter. And that's all I did for the next 15 years, running around Latin America. And then a few years ago, we came up with this idea for a show called What Would You Do? And it's funny, after all the traveling and after all the awards, the one show that people recognize me for more than anything, it's What Would You Do? And we have so many scenarios, and people often ask me, which is my favorite? Some of them are funny, and some of them are serious. But I wanted to leave you tonight with my favorite What Would You Do scenario. And it was about, the question was, what do you do if you're walking down the street and the person in front of you collapses? You don't know if they had a heart attack or maybe they just fainted, but they just pass out. So we had an actor, a stunt artist, play that role, right? It's a woman, well-dressed businesswoman. She's walking along, and she falls very convincingly. She collapses. When it was a well-dressed businesswoman, people stopped right away, put a coat over her, put a pillow under her head. They called 911, which was pretty impressive. Time and again, they did the right thing. But then I said, wait a minute. What if instead of a well-dressed businesswoman, it's a homeless man who is elderly, disheveled, smelly, bearded, matted hair, and he's like 87 years old, and he's homeless, and he's holding a beer can in his hand. What will people do then? So we switch actors. Now we have the homeless, elderly man. He's walking along, a stunt artist who falls very convincingly. He collapses, or pretends, right? And 88 people go by, and no one is stopping to help him. 88 people, we're counting them. People are stepping over him. One lady made the sign of the cross and kept going. And we thought, well, if you're homeless, you're not going to get a lot of help in this place, right? In Newark, New Jersey. Now, we had done it we did it at the train station at 7, 8, and 9 o'clock in the morning when people were in a hurry to make their train. So not only now do you have that to consider, you don't know how to help somebody who is sick and fallen to the ground and collapsed, you also are in a hurry and you need to get to school, right? Or you need to get to work. What would you do then? So when it's a homeless man, people are stepping over him, no one is stopping, we're really shocked. So I was about ready to come out, the way I always do with the cameras. But before I could get out there, we didn't see anything, but we heard the tapping of a walking cane on the sidewalk. And then into the frame of the hidden camera comes this beautiful African-American woman who's stumbling along with a cane because she has suffered a stroke. And guess what? She's homeless herself. And guess what? She stops to help. So she starts asking people going by, does someone have a cell phone to call for this man? Because she didn't. She's homeless, right? 37 more people go by, and no one is stopping, right? So she then did something we didn't expect. She stumbles down to the man on the ground, and she takes the beer can that the actor was holding and moves over with the walking cane to the trash can and throws it away, as if she was thinking, maybe if we give him a little bit of dignity, maybe if people don't think he's a drunk, maybe they will stop to help. Didn't help. 48 more people go by. We're counting them. No one is stopping. At that point, this homeless woman makes a fist to the heavens, and we could see it because the hidden camera was right tight on her face, and she was angry. She was like cursing God himself. She was going like this, and she was going like this, and she's like, how can you allow this to happen? And then she stumbled down again to the man on the ground. He was white, she's black, not that that should matter. And then she said to him, we could hear it because the actor was wearing a wireless microphone. And she said to the man on the ground, listen, sir, I don't know your name, but my name is Linda Hamilton, and I'm going to call you Billy. And she said, Billy, don't you worry, my man. I'm homeless too, so I'm going to stay here until help arrives for you. And then at that point, finally, a woman stops and calls 911, finally. And I come out. There's a lot of commotion when I come out. The people are excited. It was a show. They know the show now. They were relieved that it wasn't real, right? People are crying, thanking God that it wasn't real. But in all that chaos, we lost our hero. Linda Hamilton, the woman who stopped to help the homeless man, who was homeless herself, she disappeared. Now, we knew she was homeless. We knew her name. But a few weeks later, we put it on What Would You Do? And the day after it aired, thousands of people started calling ABC, emailing us, going on social media, asking who was that woman. We want to help that homeless lady who's a hero. They went on Facebook and they started a GoFundMe page with her picture from the video, and it said, touched by an angel, touched by Linda Hamilton. And they raised $8,000 for her. So now we got to go find her to do an update on the story, right? A follow-up to the story. And so how do you find a homeless woman? You know, we put up her face, we took posters, we put it all over Newark, the train station, all kinds of liquor stores and homeless shelters. And finally, 2 weeks later, we found Linda Hamilton. And my producer said, John, you got to come and interview her for the piece to do an update. So I sat on some church steps with Linda Hamilton, and I showed her the video because she hadn't seen it. So I brought my laptop and I showed her the video. And I said, Linda, remember the man who fell? She goes, yes. I said, at that corner, you helped him. You know, people are calling you a hero. So we put the $8,000 in a bank account for her. We got her a place to live, ABC did. We got her medicine that she was supposed to be taking for her heart. And the thing that made her most excited of all, we got her her own cell phone. And she was jumping up and down with joy like a 12-year-old. And I said, now, Linda Hamilton, the next time you see something unsettling, you can call 911 on your cell phone. But at the end of the day, I said, Linda, people are calling you a hero, right? They created this Facebook page for you called Touched by an Angel. Do you consider yourself an angel or a hero? And she looked at me, and I'll never forget her look, dead on. She goes, no way, John Quiñones. No way. She said, let me tell you why I think this happened. She said, I think God put me on that corner, on that street, on that day, because he knew you were there with your What Would You Do cameras, and he wanted to teach people a lesson. And who better to teach that lesson than someone who has walked in the shoes of the homeless? So tonight I leave you with that message. The next time you witness an injustice, there's something wrong, and and the little voice in the back of your head says, do something. Remember the words and the actions of Linda Hamilton, this woman who was homeless, who had suffered a stroke, and yet she stopped to help a stranger, not because she was going to be on national television. She didn't know that. Not because she was going to get $8,000 in the bank and her house to live in, and medicine for her heart, and her own cell phone. She did not know that. She did it because, as my dear mother Maria would say, her corazón, her heart, told her it was the right thing to do. Thank you for having me here. It's been a real joy being with all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So kind. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I've had a great time here. It's been a blast. And no, thank you. That's enough. Come on. Thank you. It's from the heart. It's from the corazón. We have some time for some questions, I think. So let's take a few questions from the audience. This scares me a little bit, you know? I'm the reporter. I ask the questions. I'm not supposed to be put on a hot spot here, but we'll see. Anything about journalism, my career, what would you do? Whatever you feel like asking. We have a few minutes to entertain those. So who goes first? Do we know? Anyone who steps up or not? Oh, wow. Here she comes. All right. Hi there, how are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to
I'm
meet
a big
you.
fan.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
So what would you do?
Yeah.
I had to say it. Instead of going into broadcast journalism, did you have any like other paths that you considered? Or did you always know that you wanted
Well,
to?
I knew I really wanted to do it, but it didn't look like I was going to get to do it, right, early on. It didn't look too promising. So I think I'd make a good bartender, right? I can have a nice conversation with them. So what are you drinking tonight? Let me tell you about my day today. No, I think I would have gone into teaching because I love, talking to kids. This morning I had a great time at the West View Elementary and just talking to students. I love that. Maybe law school. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about law school, although I think I would have been pretty bored given the way my career turned out. That or anything that involves dealing with people. I love people to this day. Anytime, I just love going out and talking to folks, even when I'm by myself, and they're asking about what would you do. I love chatting about the show and telling stories. So I think maybe teaching or maybe a bartender.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi there. Good to see you again.
Hi, good to see you again. So we met earlier. Every time I meet someone, I just give them my name. It's Eric Lagos, but I was born Eric Lagos. Growing up, I had learned, like you, trying to take away that Mexican accent because my parents they migrated into the country 2 years before I was born.
Yeah.
Was there ever shame that you felt personally, I guess, in your culture? Because for me, I felt like I had to become more American to be accepted in even my neighborhood and try to get further because I'm also a first-generation student. My parents never went to college. So do you have like a sense of like giving back to your own community, or what makes you feel proud in your culture from where you came from?
Yeah.
Because regardless of where I came from, I'm proud of everything.
Good for you. I'm proud of you for doing for feeling that way. In the beginning, yeah. I mean, when the coach is hitting your rear end for speaking Spanish, that'll do a lot to kill your spirit to be proud to be Mexican. Keep it down. I don't want to be known for being Mexican because he might, or speaking Spanish because he might attack me, right? So it was tough. It was tough, and the expectations were so low. They didn't think that only because my parents didn't go to college. What my teachers would say, what gives you the audacity to think that you are college material? So yeah, there were many times when I felt that I wasn't good enough, and even today, when I'm in a meeting, imposter syndrome, right? People, you feel like you don't belong. Are you good enough? When I was at ABC, one of my fellow anchors was the son of the governor, and he did the same job I did, and my father was a janitor. So I took personal pride in that, I gotta say. But yeah, it does a lot to kill your spirit. When I went to New York, what really helped was when I moved to New York City, where it's a melting pot, right? Everyone is there. You meet Jewish people, you meet Muslims, you meet, certainly the transgender community. Everyone is there, and you learn to accept others. And people thought that I was interesting, as opposed to San Antonio, where to them I was just another Mexican. In New York, they loved having a student from South Texas, and they seemed intrigued by it. And then I saw my own personal wealth, and I was able to overcome any misgivings I had. But my mother did a lot before that to really make me proud. And that English teacher, those little, building blocks, helped build who I became, despite the early hurdles that I had to overcome. So yeah, you just look for the good in people, and you surround yourselves with people who believe like you. My best friend in high school was Luis Rodriguez, and he just arrived from Mexico 2 years before, and his English was really bad. But he was the one who kept telling me, John, we're going to make it someday. I'm going to be a lawyer, and you're going to be a television reporter, and don't stop thinking you won't. And he introduced me to Upward Bound and all that. Louis is now a lawyer, and I'm a reporter, so it worked. So that's how you just keep looking at the bright side.
Gracias.
Yeah. Hi.
Coming from a big fan of the show, my parents and I've watched it forever now. I was wondering if there were any scenarios that you helped write and produce based off things that you've seen in your life, any of your own input on some of the scenes and things that you've shot.
Yeah, many of them that we come up with, I draw upon my own experiences as a Latino growing up in America. People would make fun of my mother for speaking, for me helping her read the menu in English because she couldn't read. So we did a scenario on that. People would follow us around stores in Toledo, Ohio, when we stopped picking tomatoes for the week, and we'd go to get a hamburger somewhere or go to the Goodwill store to buy some clothes, and we were dirty and spoke with a funny accent. People would follow us around thinking we're going to steal something, right? Shopping while brown, right? So all of those things I draw upon, and we've made different scenarios. And of course, I have a tendency to understand, the ability to understand people who have gone through some tough times because I was there. And that's why I feel like in many ways I was kind of destined to do a show like What Would You Do? Because I understand what it's like. I've been there.
Well, thank you. Tonight was amazing.
Thank you. Doris. How you doing, young man?
Doing pretty good, doing pretty good. My name is Grayson Jocelyn. Among other things, I'm a writer for the Ball State Daily News, currently an opinion writer. And with you coming up, it reminded me of the times in high school whenever I would watch this in my high school English class, among other things. But you telling your story reminded me of my own life story. This is my first time I'm admitting this to anyone publicly. But I am actually on the autism spectrum, and I am a first-generation college student, and I do believe you talk about dealing on your show with LGBTQ experiences, body shaming and stuff like that. I do feel that there is like a unspoken kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but people are still closed off to people who have learning disabilities. And as someone who's kind of hid that from people my whole life, I am just now learning to accept myself as a person. And so what would you say to the people out there tonight who may have learning disabilities or not, to try and accept those people who have those differences, but people can't see them?
First of all, I want to say congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So proud of you. I would just say, look, we're all different. We all have something, right? We all got something going on in our lives. If it's not the way we look and our body shape or our face color, the accent in our voice or the religion we practice, we all have something different. So come on, get with it. Just accept us for who we are. We're all fellow human beings. We all bleed the same color of blood. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, forgot about you guys. See? Oh, may not be on. Is it on?
Hello?
Yep.
There we go. So I'm a double major in public communications and like telecommunications.
Okay.
And I'm wanting to do like a talk show host about like bringing up people like day-to-day lives of whatever job they're doing to meet like an actor that has played that role. And I'm kind of just worried about, I don't know where I'm going to start or where to even go after college, during college, and I just want to see if you have any advice.
Yeah, YouTube. I mean, social media. Start doing it there. That stuff, I mean, you have that I never had, that ability to do your own channel, you know, and start there and start gaining viewers and then use those recordings to show to TV stations or to Hulu or to Disney Plus or to me or just reach out, but start doing it and getting practice doing it. That's how you'll get better.
Thank you.
All right, of course, yeah. Hola.
Hola. So I come from a very small town, Richmond, Indiana. And it's hard being a Hispanic girl or woman and being very short. So that's something that I've always struggled with. Like, I always compare myself because, like, oh, I'm a very short brown girl. And I'm going into public relations, so that is something that I'm very passionate about. I just wanted to ask you, because as a first-generation student also, we look up to people like you. As an example, is like, hey, if they did it, I know I can also.
Of course, that's
so
why
it's
I'm
like,
here.
Yeah, and a huge struggle that I have is imposter syndrome, because I'm like, oh, why am I here? Like same with me. I didn't know English until I got to first grade also. So that was yeah, I know, right? So that was a huge challenge that I had to overcome, and the confidence of like starting to speak it. And always I always mess up with my English, and I get very nervous of it. I'm like, oh shoot, they caught that, or something like that. So I guess I'm asking, like, how do you overcome that imposter syndrome and being Hispanic in the United States?
Because I think of my father, I think of my mother, and whenever I feel like inadequate, I realize how proud they were before they passed away, and that makes me. If they could recognize my talent and they loved me for what I accomplished and how far I came from picking tomatoes in Ohio to doing the national news in New York, then I think I've done okay. So that reminds me that I've come a long way, and that keeps me going. But yeah, there are times when I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm wondering, am I really qualified to be here?
Right, yeah.
But then I look at the stories that I've done and the 7 national Emmys, and I say, yeah, I guess I've Thank you. Hi.
Hey, John. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
So I think most of us are pretty lucky to be born in a generation, in a world that's more accepting of people.
Yes,
based on
you
their
are so lucky.
diversities.
When I was in high school, there were no gay kids in my high school.
Really?
Well, guess what? There were, right? They just couldn't be themselves. What a tragedy that was, right. I hate that. But anyway, go ahead. You live in a better world now.
That's fine. But I wanted to ask, so how did you grew up in a time where there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of prejudice against these differences in these people, and I wanted to know, how did you navigate through the journalism field in a time where many Latinos, Hispanics weren't really accepted?
I wanted to make my family proud first. And my mother meant everything to me, And when I became a well-known TV reporter, I would be covering a war zone somewhere, and she would be deathly afraid that I was going to get hurt. So my sister said she would run up to the TV screen and bless the screen, and it kept me safe. And it did. It worked. So here I am today. But I just, again, I was able to realize that I was very lucky to have been afforded that opportunity now. So I'll be the first one. So I'm just going to forge ahead. And I've got a lot of people behind me, and they're depending on me. So I'm not only worried about myself being a good reporter, but I felt a responsibility to make our people look good and to tell America, look, he's Hispanic. Yeah, he's Mexican, but he can tell a damn good story. And look he speaks English so well. And, and all of those things. I just wanted to prove the world wrong. And I just practiced a lot. I worked hard at making darn sure that I didn't make our people look bad. Because the minute you do that, as a reporter, your integrity is all you have. As soon as you screw up and you tell something wrong on the air, you're done. So I felt tremendous responsibility for people like you, because I knew you were coming behind me and breathing hard. And then someone told me, when you take the elevator of success up to the top floor, make sure you remember to send the elevator back down for people waiting for you. And sometimes maybe you should go down with the elevator and lend your helping hand. So that I felt that I wanted to do it for you too, believe it or not. I thought about that because I was lucky enough to have been the first one. And yeah, there was some discrimination, some pigeonholing. Sometimes they would assign me to a story because I'm Hispanic, but I took advantage of that. I just ran with it because I knew that if I could tell a good story, maybe it would enlighten, and it was getting national exposure. So those were stories that weren't being told. So I would gladly take a Latino story that was otherwise going to be ignored. So you make the best of it, You make lemonade from the lemons you get, and you'll be okay. So don't worry, okay?
Take that to heart. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Hi there.
Hi.
So can you tilt it down?
Yes. Okay. Hang on.
Okay, there you are.
As you can see, I'm very short too. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. I've been watching your show since I was little, and as you can see,
way to make me feel old now. Since you were born?
No. But
yeah.
As you can see, I am Black, and your show it brought light into what I didn't know when I was that little about prejudice and bigotry and stuff like that. And I just want to know if
your show, did it make you more disappointed in humanity, or did it give you more faith?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I see the world. I'm the kind of guy with a half full glass, right? So I look for the good things in life. And what makes me happy was that in every one of the scenarios that we've done, and we've done 1,000 scenarios, someone asked me earlier today, was there ever one scenario where no one did anything? And the answer is no. In every single one of our scenarios, at the end of the day, maybe it took a long time, but at the end of the day, someone came up and did something beautiful that restores your faith in humanity. And that's the beauty of the show. It reminds us there's so many good people out there. And they can be of any race, you know? It can be often the person you would least expect to do the right thing. You know, we'll be doing a thing on race, and in walks this big dude with a shaved head and tattoos on a motorcycle. He pulls up, and we think, I tell the security people, watch out, this guy, you know, he's the racist, man. He's going to agree with the racist. And he turns out to be a teddy bear who embraces the victim of and chases out the racist. Conversely, a little old lady walks in with her beautiful flower in her hair and a pink dress, and she turns out to be the meanest racist you can imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
You just never know. And that's what I love about the show. It just constantly surprises us, and sometimes we're behind the scenes in tears. Me and these veteran cameramen who've covered wars and, you know, all kinds of things, so touched by the goodness in their fellow human beings. And that keeps, I'm very encouraged by what I see, and the fact that young people like you guys are such fans of the show. I had no idea until a few years ago. My kid said, Dad, do you know you're blowing up on TikTok? There's a meme about you, Dad. Millions of people were you know, looking at us on TikTok, making their own TikToks. These kids, they made a 10-second TikTok. It takes me 5 minutes to do a what would you do scenario. These kids can do it in 7, 8, 10 seconds, and they were effective. And I love that. And that gives me inspiration to know that you guys care about those things and that you're holding us accountable. You know, the older generation saying, you see, you're not doing the right thing. You talk a mean game, but you don't walk the walk.
Yeah, right.
And I like you guys holding our feet to the fire. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, yeah.
So first I want to say, if you guys hear my heartbeat like as I'm talking, I'm so nervous. But I wanted to, well, I don't have any real deep questions or anything like that. I just wanted to say that I think it's amazing that your faith and everything, like you've kept that as you've traveled through all your endeavors in life. I know that some people can kind of, you know, stray away from what they believe in, but, you know, I think that it's amazing that you kind of adhere to your values and your morals, number one. Number two, I only get to see you from like chest up, so I love your shoes. Great shoe selection. And number three, I just kind of wanted to like, before everybody rushes you, I want to know if you were doing photos because I want to take a picture. I'm just honored to be here in the same room as you. So
of course, we'll do it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
yes.
We'll do
I'll
right
wait,
at there.
like,
Just sit right there.
Yeah.
All right. How about where? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Pull it up so I can hear you better. Yeah, okay.
So hello, my name's Dana Jones.
Okay.
I like to say my name too.
Okay.
So also big fan. My mom and I watch your show all the time. She's here with me tonight. She's actually an English teacher too. So when you were talking about your English teacher, I was like, Mom.
Such a hero, you know?
Right. So I had the opportunity all through high school to learn Spanish, and I took 4 years of Spanish. I took AP Spanish. It was a wonderful opportunity. However, I'm always very nervous to use it. Like my mom always tries to encourage me to use it, but I'm just very nervous.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous that people will like judge me because I don't use the right verb tense or whatever the case may be. So I guess what would you say to people who are trying to learn a language and are too nervous to use it and practice it with people?
Hang out with these kids. No, yeah, I mean, broaden your circle of friends and include some Latinos who are able to help you. I don't think they'd make fun of you. They would be flattered that you're caring enough to try to learn about the language. And like everything else, man, you know, we worry about so much in this world. I've learned that as I've gotten older, nothing is worth, fretting over that much. Very few things really matter. And if you sweat the little stuff like that, it's a waste of time. So just go out there and boldly order in Spanish, go to the restaurants, do what you can, surround yourself with people and talk to folks who speak Spanish, and just go for it. And I wish I could speak other languages. I only speak Spanish and English. I wish I could speak French or Italian or German or French. Bask in the ability to even say a few words. That's really impressive. More Americans should do that.
Muchas
Thank
gracias,
you.
señor.
Gracias. Shelby, how are you?
Hello again. I'm doing good. So I was just curious. My professor today, she was in charge of the Westview visit that you did at the elementary school, and she said there was a little boy there who had a question ready, and his question was, has anybody ever looked down on you for speaking Spanish? And I'm just curious what you said to that little boy, because that just broke my heart.
Yeah, of course. When we were picking tomatoes in Ohio, remember when we went shopping and we were speaking Spanish, people would look at us and say, why don't you speak English? Learn English. This is America. I mean, I've heard that. The woman who assumed, just by looking at me, that I didn't speak English. Little did she know that I have a national television show in English. But people make assumptions, and you just can't take that too seriously. You correct them. I put her in her place. It was very nice. But yeah, of course, it happens, and happens more often than you think. And that's why we do What Would You Do? Because a lot of people don't believe that these things happen in real life. So when you put a hidden camera on it, we expose it for what it is, and we show you that it does happen. That a lot of people agree with the racism. And I got to tell you, the last 6-7 years have been really tough. When politicians are telling us that it's okay to be racist, that it's okay, then people feel like they have permission to resort to their darkest impulses. And so there's been that increase in hatred and hate crimes in this country. So we got to fight that, and your generation will do it much better than mine did. So thank you. Anything?
And then after this young lady over here, we won't be accepting any more questions.
Okay.
This isn't my question, but I want to piggyback off of something that you said. I'm so proud of you guys and your generation and everything that you guys are doing. With that said, I am a 39-year-old first year, so this is very odd and stressful.
Even the microphone loved that.
What a way to end it. I'm a TCOM major, media major. My end goal is to open my own production company. That's very women-led, LGBTQ+ led, minority-led.
Yeah.
I just want to give voices to film and media in ways that isn't acceptable, I guess. I don't know what I want to word it. Obviously, my heart is beating in my chest too. Sorry. So my question is, do you have any advice for that side of things to accomplish these goals before, I don't know, I die of old age?
You're not dying anytime soon. Come on. Congratulations on doing this, right? God, you're a freshman right now?
Yeah.
All right.
First semester.
Hey,
freshman.
so what? There's a lot that we can accomplish as we grow older.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
And you're very young. My advice about your own production company, my son has a production company in Miami, and he's 30 years old, and he struggles because when you have your own company, Paris, how tough it is sometimes. You have ups and you have downs, and sometimes he gets worried and he's not going to make it, and I'm always there egging him on. But, in the end, it's worth it because you are doing your own thing. No one is telling you what to do. Even I, as a reporter on ABC, I'll tell my stories my own way, but in the end, I work for Disney and I work for ABC. I'm under contract, to do the stories their way. You have such a wonderful opportunity here to do things your own way. It's totally yours. I love that. You should relish in that. And don't, if there are down periods, don't get too depressed about that. There'll be a light at the end of that tunnel, and just continue to carve out your little niche, and you'll be a success. I have no doubt, there's lots of room for that right now, more than ever in this country, because not enough of that has existed. People with their own companies who have that vision that you bring now. I think it's great, so congratulations.
Does your son have a support group?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you all so much for being here. We do know that some of you would like to take a picture with John.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we will line up on that staircase, and then we'll come on stage, and then you'll exit to the right.
All right.
This will be a picture opportunity, so not a long conversation. John has made his email address available, so
Thank
you
you
can have
guys. You're a
contact
great
with him
crowd.
as well.
I love you
Thank
guys.
you all
Thank
so
you.
much for being here.